In this video, I'm going to show you the best things you didn't know Reaper could do. So the first thing I want to show you is project templates. I have a project set up here with some drums, bass, guitar, and vocals set up for a live recording. And I have the inputs set up for each track, along with plugins on each track based on the perfect settings for each instrument. So we probably want to use this again. That's where project templates comes in. So we'll go up here to the File menu, under Project Templates, and choose Save Project as Template. That opens up the folder where our project templates are stored. As you can see, I already have a bunch, and we can give this project template a name to use again. I'll name it Live Project and save it. So now, if we close this project, and we want to use it as a template for another project, just go to File, Project Templates, and find it in here, Live Project, and it opens up exactly as we left it. So we can record a new project completely different and then save it with its own name. When we want to do it again, go back to the File menu, Project Templates, and load it again. And start over with the next project. And if you want to use this as Reaper's default, or any project as Reaper's default, we can go to our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command Comma on the Mac, and go to the Project tab, and just add that project template in here. Go to Browse, we'll find the live project template we created. It shows up in here, and now, every time we create a new project, File, New Project, it opens up exactly like this. So we could use this project template or any project template as a default for every new project we start, or just use it from here. As you can see, I already have a bunch of project templates I've saved to use again. Just choose it. It creates a new project starting with exactly how we saved that project template. And speaking of templates, we could also do it on a track basis instead of the whole project. So if we're really happy with this bass sound, we could select it and right-click it, go to Save Tracks as Track Template. It opens up our Track Templates folder, give it a name. We could also include the items or the envelopes in the template, save it, and now, if we want to use that bass sound, just right-click, insert track from template, and choose that bass track. And it shows up right here, ready to go with the inputs, the volume, and all the plugins we chose in their settings for that track. And we could do this with multiple tracks as well. Let's say we love these drum tracks, just select them all, right-click, save tracks as track template, give it a name, save it. And if we want to add those drum tracks to any project, just right-click, insert track from template, and choose the drum tracks template. And it adds those tracks to any project we want. Again, with all the settings, their volumes, their inputs, and the plugins and their settings as well. It's just a great time saver when we've set up our tracks, so we don't have to do it each time. So that's track templates. And if we don't want to import the whole track as a track template, we could just import the effects using effects chains. So the project setup here with a vocal I'm pretty happy with. If we go to the effects on this track, we'll see I have a gate, EQ, compressor, and another EQ, and all the settings that work for this vocal. So maybe I want to save this so I could use it again in another project, maybe with the same singer or a different singer. We could save all these effects as an effects chain. Just right-click, go to Effects Chains, and save all effects as chain. And it opens up to our Effects Chains folder. Let's give it a name, save it, and now, if I'm working in a different project with a different vocal, we could add those effects just by right-clicking this button, go to Effects Chains, and choose that effects chain. And it adds it exactly as we saved it, with all the plugins and their presets or settings set exactly the same way. And if we want to add a keyboard shortcut to the effects chain, we could do that as well. Let's clear these effects. Let's open the browser to add more. Go to effects chains, and it should show up in here. Just right click it, create a shortcut, save it. We can close this, and now we can select this track, hit that keyboard shortcut, and it adds that effects chain to that track. Again, with all the plugins we saved, along with the settings or presets within them. Another great time saver within Reaper. We could also use project tabs. As you can see, I have a project open right here, but if I want to open another one or a new one, we can go up here to the File menu and choose New Project tab, which opens up a whole new project at the same time as the other one. And we can copy and paste different media or tracks from one to the other. So I could select the vocal, copy it, go to the other tab, and paste it. Now the vocal is in this project as well. Or we could just open up a previous saved version. Let's close this one. Go to the File menu and go to Recent Projects. Hold down the Shift key and just choose a recently saved project we want to check out. I'm going to choose this one. And this project is similar to the other one, but a different version I saved before. And because we held down the Shift key, both projects are now open at the same time. We have this one and this one to go between. Kind of useful to see multiple projects and work with them without closing each one. Next, we have flexible snap distance. By default, if we turn on our grid and snapping and we move our items, they're going to snap right to our grid. We can't place it anywhere in between. Right now it's set to a whole note. So no matter where we move our items, they're going to be placed right on our grid. Unless we hold down the Shift key to bypass that snapping. But we can make this more flexible. If we right-click the snapping button, it opens up our snap grid settings. And we can turn off snap to grid at any distance, which is on by default. But if we turn it off, it'll be more flexible. So now I can move this item. It doesn't snap to our grid unless we get close to the grid. Then it snaps right on it like a magnet right on the grid. But it's more flexible as we can move it within like this. And it'll snap if we get close. And how sensitive this is could be adjusted right over here with the snap distance. I have it set to 15 pixels, but by default it's set to 4, which behaves a bit more sensitive. We have to get really close for it to snap within 4 pixels. I personally find that too close, so I use 15. But either way, it's more flexible that it doesn't always snap at any distance. It only snaps when we get close to our grid, like this. But speaking of which, notice this item isn't right on the grid. It starts over here, between the grid. So when we snap it, it's going to be out of time. So instead, we can use the feature snap relative to grid. We can go back to snapping and choose it right here. Snap relative to grid. Notice the icon changes, letting us know we're in snap relative to grid mode. Now if we move it, it's still going to snap, but relative to our grid. So you can move it 1 bar over, or however you set that grid, but it's going to snap relative to the grid, not on the grid. So because it started right over here, we move it, it snaps over here instead, or here, or here. But if you don't want to use this mode, we could turn this off, and we could use another feature called Snap Offset. If I double click this item, we could adjust our snap offset right here, or just adjust it on the item. Go to the lower left corner, see the cursor changes, we could drag a line over, which is called the snap offset. So I put this right on bar 6. Now it's going to snap based on this offset. So again, if we move the item, it snaps based on this line or the snap offset. here, here, or here. Again, because the item didn't start on the grid. And this could be useful for drums. We could put it right before a transient. Now this line is going to snap to our grid, right here, or here, or here. And that's the snap offset, which is similar to snap relative to grid, but by doing it this way, we don't have to turn this option on. We can snap normally, but just move the snap offset to be right on the nearest grid line. And if we move it, it snaps based on the snap offset. So the next thing I want to show you is item or take effects. As you probably already know, on our tracks, we have track effects over here in the track control panel. But we could also have effects right on the items. As we can see up here, the effects button, if I click this, it opens up the effects for that item, or for takes. If you have different takes, you can have different effects on each take. Let's keep it simple and go over item effects. Now you're probably wondering why you'd want this, because you already have track effects over here. But one of the best reasons is to add an effect to just some sections, but not to the whole track. So let's hear the project I have open right now.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business with a different name.
And let's say on this vocal, I want to put an effect just on the second line. We can split the item, type S, right before and after, and then go to the effects button on this item and add an effect to this. I'm going to add a flange and a pan, and I've already saved an effects chain for that right here called flange and pan. Double click it, it opens up right here, and I have a flange and a pan, but it's just going to be on this one item. Let's hear it.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business.
And we could tweak this effect. Let's adjust the pan to be faster.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business.
Now the effect is only on this item. We're still hearing the track effects on the entire track, but our item or take effects are just happening on this item. And we can copy and paste them just by dragging and dropping them. Let's split this vocal as well. Type S, and S again at the end. And we can add the effect to this one, either separately or dragging and dropping this from here to here. And now we have different versions of the same effect, the flange and pan, also on here. And we can tweak it to be different. Let's make the pan a bit slower for this one.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business with a different name. Who's the target?
Now the effects are only on these two lines. And they're different because they have different effects on each. So that's the benefit of item or take effects, as opposed to using track effects, which still affects the whole track, while the item or take effects just affect the item or take. So the next thing I want to show you is locking. If we go up here into our toolbar, there's a button for locking. We can right click it, and we can see all the different things within Reaper we can lock. For instance, we could lock all our items right here. Let's enable it. And now I can't grab or move any items in the arrange view. So that's pretty useful if we want to avoid accidentally editing our items. But the feature I use the most is this one right here, to prevent left-right movement. This will prevent our items from going out of time if we move them to different tracks. Let's say I want to grab this vocal and move it down to different tracks. We can't accidentally change the timing as we pull it down, like this, if we first turn on locking. and I can grab my items and move them from track to track without changing their timing on the timeline, so they won't go out of time. You could also choose the opposite to prevent up-down movement. This will stop us from accidentally moving our items to other tracks. So I can still grab this and move it around, but I can't bring it down to a different track. Again, just restricting that movement. So that's locking. The next thing I want to show you is the volume knob. As you know, to adjust the volume on our tracks, we could adjust our fader or knob over here, up or down. We could also adjust the volume of each item separately, using the volume knob on each item right here. To bring it down or up. Now you're probably wondering why you'd want to do that. Maybe you recorded too quiet or too loud, and you want to adjust it, because the volume we adjust over here is pre-fader, but also pre-effects, while this volume is post-effects. So if you want to adjust any of the level going into your effects, we could do it on the items, using the volume knob to bring it down or up. And we could also use this to change the level of each item compared to the others. Like with this vocal, let's say this line is too loud, we could split it by typing the S key, before and after, and adjust the level of this item separately from this one, as it has its own volume knob. So we can match our levels line by line, just by splitting and creating new items to adjust their volume. And also to fix some mistakes. Like with this vocal line right here, I'm noticing the S's are too loud.
It's the same.
So we can adjust the S levels by splitting it and adjusting their volume. Adjust the S's separately from the vocal around it.
It's the same business. It's the same business. It's the same business.
So we can use the volume knob to fix some problems with S sounds or P pops to get a more perfect track. Or just use it overall to adjust the level of our items, using the volume knob. The next thing I'm going to show you is recording and comping in lanes. By default, if we record some vocals like this,
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
then we record on top of this, Reaper's going to create takes.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
So we can see now we have two takes of this vocal, take 1 and 2, which we can click on to choose between or hit the T key to switch. But there's limitations to using takes. Like if I split right here, it splits both items at the same time, as we can't have different lengths in different sections, because takes are based on items, where lanes are not. So we could split or cut up our pieces completely separately in lanes. So let's undo this and use lanes instead. We'll go up here to the options menu, overlapping recording behavior, and choose to add lanes. Now if we record on top of this,
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
now it records lanes, lane 1 and 2, which you could hear by soloing each lane, lane 1 and 2. But now, if I split over here, it only splits this item. It doesn't split this one, so we can completely edit this section separately from this one. But we can comp on a separate lane. We could right click, go to comping, and choose comp into new empty lane. It creates a new lane to comp into. Now we can just create comp areas by dragging like this. Let's drag another one here and make as many comp areas as we want that we could choose between. So now up here we see what we've chosen. We could still use the T key to switch what lane we're choosing, lane 1 or lane 2 for that area. or just click in them to choose the area. And we're done and we're happy with this comp. We can just right click up here and disable our lanes. And it looks like a normal track, which can still be edited like this or like this. And if we want to recomp again, just right click, re-enable our lanes, and we go back to comping again. Maybe choose a different lane for this one or this one and so on, and go back and we're done comping, just disable them again. So that's recording and comping in lanes. So the next thing I want to show you is the render queue. Let's say you're making a bunch of mixes and they're quite long, so they take time to render. And you're going to make many of them, so you don't want to sit around and wait for each to work on the next. We can create a render queue that saves all the mixes before we render them and then render them at the end, like this. I have a project set up here. I want to render this section from verse 1 to verse 1b. I'm going to double click in between, which selects that section. And then we'll go to the render window. Under File, we'll choose Render, which opens up the render window. We'll give this mix a name. We'll call it mix number 1. And we could choose to add it to the render queue, or choose to add it to the render queue and close the window. Let's choose that. Now it's added to our render queue. Now let's change our mix to make another one. Let's say the client wants a vocal up mix just in case. To give them options, let's go to the routing on the vocal track and make it a bit louder. It's -5 right now. Let's make it -4. And now we'll render it again. Open the render window. Let's give it a different name, vocal up. And again, instead of hitting render, we'll go to the queue and add it to the queue and close the window. Now that render is saved as well. And let's do one more. Let's say they want a mix with the vocal down. Let's go to the routing. So we'll go to -6 and save this one as well. We'll name it vocal down. And instead of hitting render, we'll add it to the queue and close the window. So now to view all these renders, we can go to the File menu and go down here to Queued Renders, which opens up this window showing us all these mixes we've added to the queue. And of course, you can make as many as you want. We just made 3. And we could choose just to render selected ones right here, or render them all right here. And if we hit this, REAPER starts to render each mix one at a time, which we could do while we're taking a break or doing an errand. So we don't need to sit through each render as we do them. We could render all of them at once. So we can close this and open our hard drive. And here's all the mixes we made. Mix number 1, vocal up and vocal down. It's a great time saver if you're dealing with very large projects and you need to create many different renders or mixes. So that's the render queue. And speaking of rendering, we could also create a dry render run. If we open up the render window, instead of rendering our mix right here, we can create a dry run which produces no output. No actual file will be rendered. We could hit it and still see what's going on our mix, look at the waveforms, look at the stats that go with it, and then make adjustments with our mix, and actually render it and create a file when we're happy with those choices. And we could also create a post-processing render. If we choose over here, we can normalize after we render. Just choose a value in here for peak, true peak, maybe our LUFS level, and just set it up over here to the level we want. And that'll be applied after we render, over here, or even after the dry run, so we could see what's happening. Just hit it. Here we could see our statistics. And over here we'll see what the post-processing render does. In this case, it brought down our file about -12 dB to get to the post-processing number we wanted. The next thing I want to show you is solo in front. As you probably already know, to solo a track, hit the solo button, and we're just going to hear that track. Like in this situation, we just hear the vocal.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
So if we solo the vocal, we just hear the vocal.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
Or if I solo the drums, we just hear the drums or the bass. But we could also use solo in front to also solo the tracks, but not completely. So the other tracks will just be dimmed a bit. So go up here to the options menu and choose solo in front. Now that mode is on, so if I solo the vocal, we'll hear the vocal, but the rest of the track will still hear a bit.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
So the vocal is just in front. It's not completely soloed. And again, the same with the drums
What's the angle?
and the bass.
What's the angle?
With the concept, you still want to hear the rest of the track. You just want to put the solo tracks in front of the mix to be a bit louder. And we can control how much in front it is in our preferences. Let's go to our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command Comma on the Mac. Opens up our preferences, and we'll go to the tab for mute and solo. And right over here is the solo in front dimming setting. It defaults to -18, so the track without the solo track will be -18 lower. We can adjust that to any setting we want. So we make it -10. The track should be louder compared to the solo track, or not quite as dimmed.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business.
So again, the track we solo is in front, but not completely soloed. But to give us more control over that setting, we could use an action. Let's go to the actions by hitting question mark. That opens up our actions, and we'll type into the filter solo and choose this option right here to adjust solo in front dim. And we can control it with a MIDI continuous controller, like a knob or fader, or just using the mouse wheel. So I'm going to assign it to a bunch of modifiers and the mouse wheel, like this. So now, in real time, we can control how loud the other tracks are compared to the solo in front track, and use our mouse wheel to bring down the track.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game.
And bring it back up slowly.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business with a different name.
To give us more control of the level of the non-solo tracks compared to the solo in front one. And we can adjust it along the way, make it sound good with the drums.
I'm not playing that game. It's the same business with a different.
Or the same with the bass.
What's the angle? I'm not playing that game. It's the same business with a different name.
So we can always control how far back the dim tracks are compared to the solo in front track. And if you don't want to use this setting, just turn it off right here, and we're back to normal solo, where we just hear the tracks that are soloed.
I'm not playing that game.
So that's solo in front. So the next thing I want to show you is a just last touched effects parameter. This is really useful if you have a MIDI controller. We can control any effects parameter in REAPER we want. So let's open up our actions using the question mark and type into the filter adjust last, and here's the action I'm talking about. just select it, hit add, move your controller, fader, or knob. You might also want to adjust this setting over here to see which works best with your controller. This one works well with mine. So now, any effects we have open and we touch as a last touched parameter will work with this controller. So let's open the effects on this vocal. We can go to our gate and just touch the threshold, and I can use my knob on my controller to adjust the threshold on this gate. We'll go to my EQ, go to this low pass filter, and adjust the frequency up and down, or this band filter using the frequency up and down, or adjust the gain using the same knob. Go to my compressor, adjust my threshold up and down, or the makeup gain, or this other EQ with the mid-range, starting with the frequency, lower or higher, adjust the gain up and down, or the high shelving EQ to change the frequency, or change how much we boost or cut. All done with a MIDI controller with any knob or fader you want. Now, of course, you could set it all up to adjust each parameter using a different fader or knob, but doing it this way, you could just use one controller to control it all. Just touch it, and that's the thing that's being affected by that knob. So the next thing I want to show you is soloing items under mouse. If we open up our actions by hitting the question mark, it opens up our actions list. Type into the filter solo item, and we can see a few actions that we could use for soloing our items, as opposed to soloing our tracks. We could solo them, toggle solo them, and so on. But the more useful use of this is to use the SWS extensions. And if they're installed, these actions will show up. So let's take a look how these work. This one is going to toggle play from the edit cursor and solo the item and track under the mouse until we hit it again, or toggle it. So let's add a keyboard shortcut to this one. If I put my mouse on the track or items I want to solo, hit that keyboard shortcut, it solos it.
You got someone new, I know it.
Plays it, hit the keyboard shortcut again, and it stops playback. And it unsolos that item. Do the same thing with this kick. It plays it, hit it again, it stops it. With the snare, overheads, or bass, hit it again to stop it, and it'll work with folders as well. So these drums are all in a drum folder. Put my mouse over here, over this track, hit that keyboard shortcut. It plays just that track, the track or item under our mouse. And we hit the keyboard shortcut again, it stops playback and takes us out of solo. We could also use this action instead, which will do the same thing, but instead of playing back based on a edit cursor, it'll play back on the timeline based on where we place our mouse. Let's use this one instead. Replaces it. And now, if we place our mouse right before this vocal, hit it.
You got someone new, I know it.
It starts playback right at that spot. I put it right here.
But I will keep on denying it.
Hit it again to stop. If I go to the kick over here, or the snare over here, or the bass over here, it starts playback right at that spot. And there's two other options we could use as well. This one will play back from the edit cursor position, but you have to hold down the keyboard shortcut. As soon as we let go, it'll stop playback and unsolo that item or track. So we have to hold it down to play back that same section, which is going to start from the edit cursor position. Let's add it here. Replaces it. Now it's going to start playback when we hold down the keyboard shortcut, playing from the edit cursor and soloing the item or track under the mouse. So if I want the vocal, hold down that keyboard shortcut, it solos it.
You got someone new, I know it.
And if I let go, it stops playback. Do the same with the kick, or the bass, or all the drums. Soloing the item or track that is under our mouse. And the last one, we'll do the same thing, but I'll start playback where we place the mouse. So we put the mouse over here, hold down that keyboard shortcut.
But I will keep on denying.
Let go to stop. Start the snare over here, or here. Start the bass over here, and let go to stop playback. Do the same with the guitar, or the piano. It's just a quick way of soloing our items or tracks. But with these two options, you do have to hold down the keyboard shortcut. If you don't want to, just use one of these two instead. So the next thing I want to show you is solo defeat and record disable. So I have a project set up here. Let's say I want to solo my drums at all times. So I can solo the vocal while still hearing the drums or the bass, guitars, and keys, but at all times, always hearing the drums. Of course, we could solo the drums and just solo what else we want to hear, maybe the bass, or the vocal.
You got someone new, I know it.
But a better and more effective way of doing this is to solo defeat our drums. So we can select all the drum tracks, right-click the solo button, and choose solo defeat, which defeats the solo for those tracks. Notice how the solo button looks locked. So if we solo any other tracks, these tracks will still be heard. Where typically, when we hit solo, it just plays those tracks. So if I solo the bass, we're going to hear the drums and the bass. Or the vocal.
Yeah, but I will keep on denying.
Or the guitar and piano.
My emotions.
So at all times, regardless of what track we solo, we're also going to hear the drums without having to solo the drums. And to undo it, just select them again and right-click and turn this feature off. This is also useful if we create tracks for a talkback mic, whether it be in the control room or the live room. Let's make a new track. Let's name it talkback. We'll put this track into record, set our input where our vocal mic is plugged in, and let's say we want to hear this mic at all times. So the control room can hear the live room or vice versa. Typically, if we soloed our tracks, we're not going to hear the talkback mic. So we'd need to solo this one as well. That's where this feature comes in. Just right-click, solo defeat. Now if I solo my drums, we're going to hear the talkback mic along with our drums, or the vocal, or any other track we solo. This is also useful for MIDI. Let's say we set this up for the input to be MIDI. Let's put an instrument on this track with a piano sound. Let's say we want to hear that track at all times as a reference for other things that are playing. Maybe checking the key, trying out some melodies.
You got someone new, I know it. Yeah, but I will keep.
And if we solo any other tracks, let's solo the vocal and the drums, typically the piano won't be heard. If this feature wasn't turned on, we would play this.
You got someone new, I know it.
And we wouldn't hear the piano. So if we want to hear this MIDI instrument all the time, we could use that feature, solo defeat. And now, even with our tracks in solo, we're still going to hear this track.
You got someone new, I know it. Yeah, but I will keep on denying. Yeah.
So even if we solo any other tracks, we're always going to hear this track, whether it be MIDI or a talkback mic or any input we want. Which brings up the other feature, record disable. Let's unsolo our tracks. Let's say I wanted to record some vocals. If I put this track into record, this track is also in record, whether it's set up for MIDI or audio. So if we go into record to record some vocal, it's also going to record on this track, whether it be a talkback mic, instrument, maybe some hardware effects, or MIDI. If we don't want that, and we just want to use it as an input, we need to have this track in record in order to hear it, but we can right-click it and choose record disable, input monitoring only. And if we choose this, the record button looks different. Now if we go into record, we can record our vocals, and it won't record our talkback, our listen back mic, or any MIDI or input we set up on this track. So we can use this track for a reference, or a talkback mic, or listen back mic, while recording our vocals. Go into record. And it just records on this track. It doesn't record our talkback track, or if we set this up to MIDI for our piano, it's not going to record any MIDI while we record our vocals, or anything else we mean to record. So it's a great way of separating specific tracks, not to be recorded and always set so we could hear their input. So the next thing I want to show you is preview audio through a track. I have a project set up here, and I want to add a drum loop to it. Let's hear what it sounds like now. So we can go up here to the View menu and choose the Media Explorer, which opens up this dialog where we could preview audio on our hard drive. And I've turned on time stretching over here and automatically playing our loop in time with the song. So if I preview my loops, and play them along with the track, they'll be in time with my song. So I could choose my loops more carefully based on how they fit in my track. But in this situation, I want to try different effects on the loop after they're dragged in. And I want to hear that in context before I pick my loop. And we could do that by previewing our audio from this window through a track. I've already set up a track over here with effects on it, with an EQ that modulates, a phaser, and a pan. So I want to hear these loops through this track. Now by default, in the Media Explorer, we're going to hear our audio through the output of our speakers. By default, output 1 and 2, but we could choose this option instead to play through a selected track. So let's choose this, select this track. Now if I preview any of these loops, they're going to play through this track. One with the effects that are on this track. And of course, we could tweak the effects on this track in real time. Preview the loop, and we can adjust it in real time. And hear it in context with the track. Before we pick it and import it into our track. and we're ready and we're happy with the loop we chose, we can just drag it in like this and drop it. Now it's going to play and sound exactly the same. So that's how to preview audio through a track using the Media Explorer. Just change it right here to play through the last selected track. So the next thing I want to show you is delta soloing. I have an acoustic guitar on a track right here. Let's hear it. Let's say we want to EQ this track. Go to my effects. I already have an EQ on here. Maybe we think the low end is too deep. I could turn on a high pass filter and filter out the low end. But there are times we want to hear the opposite, what we're removing, what that low end sounds like. And we could do that with delta solo. If we go up here to this knob, this is usually used as a mix knob to decide how much of the effect we're using from 0% to 100%. But we could also right-click the button and turn on delta solo, which is the difference between the dry and wet sound. If we turn this on, notice the button changes, letting us know we're in delta solo mode. So now we're going to hear the opposite of what we're doing. We're just going to hear what we're cutting out. So we can just choose the unwanted frequencies. Then either right-click this button again, or just click it, and it goes back to normal. Now we're just hearing it with the low end cut. It's a great way of hearing what we're removing from the sound, at least with EQ. Let's say we want to cut the lower mids, it'll work for that as well. Just bring it down with this parametric EQ. But to really zero in on the frequency we want to cut, we could use delta soloing. Right-click it, turn it on right here. Now we're just going to hear the frequency we're removing. So if you find an annoying frequency, we can really focus in on it using this feature. Then click this again to go back to normal. And this will work on the top end as well. Let's say we want to boost the guitar to sound brighter. You might want to hear that frequency a bit clearer using delta solo. Just right-click this button again and choose it. Now we're just going to hear the frequency we're boosting. If we're not boosting anything, we're not going to hear anything. So if we really want to focus in on the sound of the strings, we can find it here. Then turn this off by clicking on it and adjust how much we want to boost. And this will work with any third-party plugin as well. Anytime we want to hear the difference between the dry sound and the wet, we could do it from here. And it'll work with other types of plugins as well, whether it be a compressor or de-esser. We just want to hear what that effect is doing. Just turn this on over here and turn it off when we're done. And that's delta soloing. So the next thing I want to show you is dragging effects to the empty track control panel. Now you probably know to create a new track, just double click over here and that creates as many tracks as you want. If you want to add a virtual instrument plugin to start, you can right click over here, go to Insert Virtual Instrument on New Track. It opens up our effects browser with the instrument tab already chosen, and we could choose an instrument plugin that'll open up automatically on a new track. I'll choose this one, and it created a new track with the virtual instrument plugin's name as the name of the track. With the plugin already on the track, it's in record and it's set to MIDI. So I'm ready to go with this plugin automatically. But we could also just drag any type of plugin to the track control panel. We could open the effects browser, Shift F, and that opens up the dialog, but it doesn't choose the Instruments tab, as we could use any effects we want. Let's say we wanted to use an EQ. Let's use Re-EQ. Just drag and drop it right over here, let go, and that created this track with that plugin name and the effects already on that track. It's a great way to start a new track when you know you want to start with a certain plugin or effect. And we could do it with multiple effects as well. Hit Shift F. Let's choose Re-Comp, Re-Delay, EQ, and Gate. And we could drag all 4 of these over here and drop them. And now it created 4 tracks based on the effect we dragged to the empty track control panel. We have a compressor right here, a delay right here, our EQ right here, and finally our gate right over here, creating a new track for each effect or plugin we drag to the empty control panel. It's just a nice time saver to create a track when we know we want a certain plugin or effect on it. So the next thing I want to show you is moving tracks to a new folder. I have some drum tracks over here, and I want to put them in a folder. The old school way to do this in Reaper is to right-click, insert new track, then go over here to this folder button, hit it. That puts all the tracks below this track in the folder. Then we go down here, hit this button twice to push these tracks out of the folder, leaving us with just these 3 in the folder. But there's a much better way to do this. We can create a new track, then grab these 3 tracks by selecting them and drag and drop it on top of this track. Notice it changes to a folder icon. Now if I place it on the left side over here, the folder icon goes away. So only over here does it create a folder, or if we drag it on top of the folder icon. And we can choose that behavior in the preferences. Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac. We can scroll down under editing behavior to the mouse, and right over here, reordering tracks via mouse drag, create a folder if. By default, it's over the middle right or the folder icon, but we could change it to the left side, just the folder, or just holding down the Shift key. My personal preference is to just hold it over the folder icon. And now, if I grab it and bring it up, it's just going to move the order of these tracks. I have to drag it over the folder icon. See the cursor changes, let go, and that makes this track into a folder with the tracks we dragged into it now within the folder. So that's a quicker way to do this. But my favorite way is doing it in one motion. Instead of creating a track first, we could select the tracks we want to be in a folder and right-click them, go to Move Tracks to Folder, and choose New Folder Track. It creates a new folder track with the track selected within that folder track. And if you want to add more tracks to this folder, like this vocal track, just right-click it, go to Move Tracks to Folder, and choose that new folder track. Now all these tracks are in this folder. Just a quicker way to create a new folder with one action. So the next thing I want to show you is hiding child tracks of folders. So here's a folder I created for my drums, and these drum tracks within this folder are known as child tracks. And there are times we want to hide them to clean up how our tracks look. And we go up here to this arrow, and if we click it once, those tracks become small. Hit it again. Now they're known as collapsed, but they're not hidden. If we want them to be completely hidden, let's click it again. Again, normal, small, collapsed. We can go to our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac, and scroll down under Appearance to Track Control Meters. And over here, we have folder collapse buttons, cycles, track heights. Again, it defaults to normal, small, and collapsed, but we can change it to normal, small, and hidden. And if we choose that, now if we hit this arrow, the child tracks are small, and now they're hidden completely. They're still going to play back normally, we're just not going to see the tracks. We'll see their audio in here, but not the actual tracks. Of course, we can get them back by clicking again, as we could cycle through all three states, normal, small, and hidden. And we could also choose just to have two states, normal, collapsed, or normal and hidden. If we choose that, now our tracks are normal, hit it again, now they're hidden completely. Again, we're still going to hear them, we're just not going to see them in the track control panel. And we could also do this with actions. Let's switch it back to normal, small, and hidden. If we open up our actions by hitting the question mark, type into the filter folder, right over here are some actions we could use. We could cycle through those different choices. Let's give it a keyboard shortcut. Now we could select this folder track, hit the keyboard shortcut to cycle through those choices. Normal, small, and hidden, or any choices you chose. Or we could just choose this action, which will show or hide the children of any selected folder track. And there's one for the mixer as well. Let's add one for here. Right click, add keyboard shortcut. And now we could select any folder, hit that keyboard shortcut, and it hides all the child tracks within that folder. Hit it again, toggles back. So very quickly, we could hide and show any tracks within our folder using a keyboard shortcut. Or we could use the arrow right here to cycle through normal, small, or hidden, based on the choices we set up in the preferences. But again, by default, it's set up to this one. But if you want them hidden, just choose this one or this one instead. The next thing I want to show you is how to fix the timing of a note. And I'm going to show you how to do this 3 different ways, depending on your situation. I have a snare track right here, and this one snare hit is a bit off time. Let's hear it. It's a little bit late. Hear it again. So the first way we could fix this, we could zoom in really close, hit the S key to split this item before and a bit after. Then zoom in and drag it to be closer to our grid like this. Then we can readjust our fades, hold on the shift key to adjust them. Now it sounds like this. Perfect. Now the second way to do this, I think, is a bit faster. Again, it's a bit too late. So we'll zoom in. Again, we'll split the item before and again after. But instead of dragging this whole item we just created, we can just move the contents within the item. Hold on Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, and it just moves the contents within the item. It doesn't move the item. So we can drag it right to our grid and readjust our crossfades the same way while holding down the Shift key. That also sounds perfect. Now this last way is more useful if you have a lot of leakage on the track, where we don't want to fix just the hit, but also the timing of everything around it. So we're going to use a stretch marker. Again, we'll zoom in. We're going to create a stretch marker before and after to lock in our timing. Put our cursor here, type Shift W. It creates a stretch marker. Get closer and put one here, and zoom out and put one over here. So now we have 3 stretch markers. And because we created 3, if I move this one, it doesn't affect the timing of anything over here. Just around this one hit, it stretches it. So now we can just stretch it to be exactly on the grid. And it should also sound perfect, with the timing of everything over here and over here left alone, just stretching within this section. Perfect. So those are 3 ways to fix the timing of a note. So the next thing I want to show you is visual track spacers. I have a project in front of me here with a vocal, drums, and so on. If I want to create some space between these groups of tracks, and go to my vocal and right-click it, go to visual spacer, and insert a spacer after this track. And that adds a visual spacer right here in between my vocal and my drums. We could also put it above tracks. So I could right-click my bass, go to visual spacer, insert spacer before tracks or above. Now that shows up over here. Or we could do it in one shot. If we want to surround our drums, select all the drum tracks, right-click, visual spacer, insert spacer before and after tracks. And that puts a spacer before and after those tracks, the selected tracks. And to remove them, just right-click on the spacer, remove spacer for each one we want to remove. And to change the height or the size of these spacers, go to our preferences, Control-P on the PC, Command-Comma on the Mac, go to the tab for appearance, and right over here, we have the visual track spacer size. It defaults to 16, but we can change it to any value we want. If we make it 8, our spacers get smaller. Or if we make it 24, the spacers get bigger. But the default is 16, so they'll look like this. So the next thing I want to show you is show effects or sends in the track control panel. Right over here is known as the track control panel, and to see our effects, normally we click on the effects button on each track. So if I go to my kick track, hit the effects button, it opens up the effects on that track. I have a compressor and an EQ, do the same with the snare, or my overheads. But we could also see that right in the track control panel. So if we go up here to the options menu, we could scroll down to show effects inserts in the track control panel, at least when size permits. So if we choose this, now we see those effects right over here in the track control panel, individually. So I could open up my compressor on my kick, shows up right here, or my EQ, shows up right here, and so on. And we could also move our effects from here, move the compressor to this track, or delete it, Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, all from right here in the track control panel, without having to open up the effects browser for each track. We can see it all right in here. Now you notice the tracks that don't have effects look a bit different than those that do. If you want to change that and make it look more uniform, we can go to the theme adjuster for Reaper 7's theme, go to the track controls, and scroll down to the section over here and choose to pin our effects inserts. And if we do that, this all lines up equally, giving us the ability to add effects in here as well. Just click in this space. That opens up our effects browser, where we could add effects from here. And of course, they show up in here as well. We could delete them or duplicate them. But it creates that space, leaving the track control panel more uniform if you prefer that look. And if you don't want to see this, go back here to the options menu and turn off the option. And it goes back to the way it looked before. And we can do the same thing with sends. Normally, to see sends on our track, we'd open up the routing and adjust our sends from here, from my reverb, drum bus, and excite bus. We could also see this and adjust it right in the track control panel. Once again, we'll go to the options menu and go down here and choose show sends in track control panel, again, when size permits. If we turn this on, our sends show up over here in the track control panel, where we can not only see them, we could also adjust how much we're sending. by bringing it up and down over here for each one of our sends, and also duplicating our sends by dragging them from one track to another, or deleting them, Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, to delete those sends with the ability to adjust them as well, right from the track control panel. And again, if you want this to look more uniform, go to the theme adjuster for Reaper 7, go to that same section on the track sends, and choose to pin the track sends as well, making the tracks, even without any sends on them, more uniform to the ones that do. And again, if you want to hide this, go back to the options menu and turn off that option. And it goes back to the way it looked before. Pretty useful for adjusting our effects and our sends. So the next thing I want to show you is show effects track controls in the track control panel. Again, our track control panel is over here. I have a vocal track here with some effects on it. I have an EQ and a compressor. Let's say we want to adjust some of these controls in the track control panel without having to open up these effects dialogues each time. And we could do that one control at a time. Let's say for our EQ, I have a high shelving EQ. I could choose to have the gain control show up in the track control panel. And we could do this two different ways. The first way is to go to this menu and go down here to show in track controls and just choose the control we want to show up. But a quicker way is to first touch the control we want to show up. Let's choose the gain and click on it, go to the menu, and notice that control shows up as last touched. Then we can just choose show in track controls right here. Choose it. Now the control shows up in here, which we can adjust just like any other knob in Reaper. Even with this window closed, we can see this and control it at any point. And if we don't want to see it anymore, Alt Control on the PC, Option Command on the Mac hides it. But we could add as many as we want. Let's add another one for our low frequency high pass filter. Choose the frequency as the last touched parameter. Show in track controls. Now that one shows up. Let's go back to the first one and adjust our frequency and add that one as well. So now we have all three we can see and adjust. The high frequency we're boosting, how much we're boosting, and the high pass filter. All adjustable, even with the effects dialog closed. And we could do this with multiple effects as well. If we go to our compressor, we could choose the threshold, show in track controls. Now we can adjust the threshold for the compressor along with the EQ all in the same area. Again, with the dialog closed at any point during our mix. And if we don't want this anymore, Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac to delete just the ones we don't want. Pretty handy to choose the most important controls we want to show up in here. The next thing I want to show you is we could show the effects user interface in the track control panel or the mixer. So my vocal track already has an EQ and a compressor on it. Let's say we want to see this user interface in the track control panel over here. We could do that by right-clicking over here, go down to show embedded user interface in the track control panel. And if we choose that, our EQ shows up in here, which we could adjust the same way we do in here. We could boost and cut, hold down the Shift key to adjust the bandwidth on each frequency, or just adjust those frequencies by just grabbing them, boost them or cut them. We could add more frequencies by double-clicking, or delete them, Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, to remove those frequencies, just like we do in the user interface over here. Now this won't work with any plugin, but it does work with the Reaper ones. We do the same thing with the Reaper compressor, right-click, show embedded user interface in the track control panel. Now that shows up as well. It's kind of small, but we can still adjust our threshold right from here. Hold on the Shift key to adjust the wet volume level up and down, or Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac to adjust the ratio. But mostly, we're just going to use our threshold from here and open this up when we need more controls, which we could do using these arrows right here and here. If you want to adjust more, just click on it. It opens up the whole plugin. Or the same on this one, so you can tweak it even more in this user interface. But sometimes we just want to see most of it in the track control panel over here, which we could do this way. And we could also use this in the mixer. Let's open the mixer. I'll go to my EQ and right click it, and we'll see this is already checked. But we could change it to show the embedded user interface in the mixer instead. And if we choose this, our EQ shows up in here. And again, we could adjust it the same way. Obviously, it's a bit smaller. We can do the same with our compressor. Right click, show embedded user interface in the mixer, and it shows up in here. Again, we can adjust our threshold, our ratio, our wet, volume level. But notice it removed the interface from our track control panel. So we have to choose which one we want. But it's still very useful to be able to see a user interface for our effects in the track control panel or the mixer. So the next thing I want to show you is creating multiple sends. I have a project set up here with multiple drum tracks, and I want to send them to a drum bus. So create a new track by right-clicking, insert new track as first track. We'll name it drum bus. Now we want to create sends from the drum tracks to the drum bus. Now we can go to the routing of any of the tracks and create a send right here to our drum bus. But that's just going to send just that one track. We want to send multiple tracks at the same time. We could also drag and drop from a routing to this track, but that also creates a send just for this track. Instead, we could select all the drum tracks, hold down the shift key, and drag and drop the routing and drop it on this track. And that creates multiple sends, which we could see as receives over here. They appear as receives on the drum bus, but they're basically all three sends from these tracks. So we can adjust them right here because we created multiple sends at once. But there's a few other ways we could do this as well. With these three tracks selected, we could right-click the routing on any of them and choose sends and send to the drum bus right here. And that does the same thing, which you could see in the routing right over here. It created all three sends at the same time. We could also do this in the mixer. Open up the mixer, all three tracks are selected, hold down the shift key, grab the routing, and drag and drop it on top of the drum bus. That also created that routing for all three tracks, creating all three sends. Now another way we could do that, again with all three tracks selected, is click over here while holding down the shift key. That also opens up that menu where we can create multiple sends from here to our drum bus. And that created all three sends the same way at the same time. Now if we want to create a setting and duplicate it very easily, let's delete these two and adjust this one. Let's say we're happy with this send. We can just drag and drop this send to the other tracks to get multiple sends, all with the same setting. So it's a bit quicker to set one up and just duplicate it by dragging and dropping it. So let's delete these, but by holding down the shift key before clicking, it respects all the tracks we selected. So if we create a send, it's going to send all the selected tracks at the same time, creating multiple sends all at once. So the next thing I want to show you is adding effects to multiple tracks. As you probably know, to add an effect to a track, we go to the effects button on a track. It opens up the effects browser, type into the filter the plugin you're looking for, maybe an EQ, and just double click an EQ over here. That adds that effect to that track. But sometimes you want to add that effect to multiple tracks. So instead, we can first select the tracks we want to add the effect to. Let's select all my drums, then go to the effects button on any one of these tracks, type into the filter what we want, maybe a compressor, choose the compressor, but instead of double clicking it, right click it. That opens up a menu where we can add it to our selected tracks. Add it here, and that adds the compressor to each one of these tracks. The kick, the snare, and the overheads. And we could add to it as well. But instead of hitting one of these buttons, we could just use the keyboard shortcut to open up the effects browser. Shift F, that opens up our browser. Let's type in the filter in EQ. Let's now select any of the tracks we want to add this plugin or effect to, and right click the effect and add it to selected tracks. And that added it right after a compressor, we put our EQ. Again, for all the tracks that were selected. Our kick, our snare, and the overheads. And we could do this with effects chains as well, which is a group of effects all saved with different presets. So let's clear these effects. We could select them first or later, open the effects browser. I'll go to my effects chains, and here's an effects chain I saved before with an EQ, a compressor, and another EQ. Now I'm going to select all the tracks I want to add it to, right click the effect, and add to selected tracks. And that added that effects chain to each one of these tracks with an EQ, compressor, and another EQ with the settings I saved when I saved the effects chain. And it's on the kick track, the snare track, and also the overheads. Any track we selected when we added that effect. So the next thing I want to show you is adding effects or an effects chain by default. So I'm starting off with a new project. If we double click to create new tracks, notice none of them start off with effects on those tracks. And although we can set up track defaults in our preferences, Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac, we can go over here to track send defaults. This is what happens when we create new tracks. The volume, automation mode, whether it shows up in the mixer, along with any monitoring modes, the record modes, along with a default inputs. We could set that all up in here, maybe change it to MIDI, and this will decide what happens when we create new tracks. But sometimes we want to add effects to our tracks by default. In other words, have them already there when we create a new track. So let's see how to do that. Open up the effects on this track. Let's add some effects we want to be on our tracks by default. Maybe a gate, we'll choose re-gate. Maybe set it up how we prefer this to work, as the settings will also be there when we create a new track. Let's add a compressor, use re-comp, maybe set it up how we like it, just the attack or release, maybe turn on auto makeup gain, and then let's add an EQ. We'll use re-EQ, maybe set up our favorite settings, and let's say we want each new track to have these three effects on it by default. Of course, you could have as little or as many as you want. We can just right click over here, go to effects chains, and choose save all effects as default chain for new tracks. Choose this. Now we can delete this track. And if we create any new tracks over here, they all start off with effects on them. The effects chain we set up before, along with the settings for each plugin, all on each track, each effect, and each setting. Our gate, compressor, and EQ. And if for some reason we want to go back to having no effects on our tracks by default, just delete this, right click, go to effects chains, and choose this option again to save all effects as default chain for new tracks. Obviously, we didn't choose any effects, so by default, on new tracks won't have any effects on them. Let's delete these tracks and create new ones. And now, when we create new tracks, there's no effects on them, as the default effects chain for new tracks was empty. It's just kind of helpful to start off with your favorite plugins already on every track you create. So the next thing I want to show you is keyboard shortcuts for effects and effects chains. Now, besides adding effects, by clicking over here, we could also open up our effects browser. Shift F, then type in any effect in the filter we want to find, like an EQ. Then we can grab any of these effects and drag and drop it right on to a track. And that adds that effect to that track. But also in here, we could add keyboard shortcuts to it without having to open up the effects browser at all. So if we wanted to add this EQ to any tracks we choose, right-click and choose Create Shortcut. Add a keyboard shortcut in here. And now, anytime we want to add that EQ to a track, just select it, hit the keyboard shortcut, and it adds that effect to that track. And it's also useful for multiple tracks. If you want to add it on all three, just select them all, hit that keyboard shortcut, and it adds an EQ to each one of these tracks. And we can do this with any effect we want. Anything that shows up in this window, like a compressor, just right-click and create a shortcut for that. This will also work with effects chains. Over here, I've created an effects chain for an EQ, compressor, and another EQ, one with the settings I like for that chain. But instead of adding it from the effects browser, we can just right-click it, go to Create Shortcut, type in a keyboard shortcut, and now we could add that effects chain to any track we select. Again, it could be just one. It adds that effects chain with all the effects in that chain, along with their settings. And again, this will also work with multiple tracks. So we could select all these tracks, hit the keyboard shortcut, and it adds that effects chain to each one of these tracks. Definitely a lot quicker than adding it from the browser each time. So the next thing I want to show you is pooled MIDI items. I have a project right here with a MIDI item. Let's see what it sounds like. Now let's say we want to duplicate this to other parts of the song. Of course, we can just loop it like this, but sometimes you want separate items. So you can mute some of them, or just change some of them without the others. So we can duplicate this item instead. Control on the PC, Command on the Mac, just drag it over to here. Now these two items are completely separate. So if we change notes on the second one, let's select the melody and drag it up a bit higher. Now it sounds like this. But only for the second one. The first one still sounds like this. But sometimes you don't want them to be separate, which is where pooled MIDI comes in. Let's delete this one, and instead, let's make a pooled copy, which we could do by holding down more modifiers. On PC, it's Control-Alt-Shift, and on Mac, it's Command-Option-Shift. Hold those down, we can make a copy. And notice the difference. This button now shows up right here and in here, letting us know that these copies are pooled. In other words, if we change one, the other one will change with it, which is really useful if you want to make changes in one and have it reflect in the others. Let's say this item is for the chorus. If we copy it to chorus 2, 3, 4, and 5, we might want it to be the same. So if we edit chorus 1, the others will change to be the same. So let's change one of these. Let's change the second one. Again, the same way, by selecting the melody and bringing it up. And now both items changed. Undo, it looked like this, and redo, it looked like this. So they both changed together. But there are times where you want to unpull them after using them. Let's say chorus 5, you want it to be different, and it's already pulled, but now you want to unpull it. Let's make one more copy, a pulled copy, like this. Notice they're all pulled, the little button. Let's say you want to change the second one, but keep the others the same. Just hit the button once, and this item is no longer pulled. This one still is, and this one still is, to each other. But now we could change this one, and it won't affect the others. Let's bring this one up. And it only affected this one, before and after. So that's pooled MIDI, allowing us to link different items together or pool them so they mirror all the same notes, no matter how we edit them. So the next thing I want to show you is automation items pooled. So our project set up here with a vocal. I want to automate or draw in some automation for volume. So I'm going to hit the V key, which shows a volume envelope, and draw in some automation. Maybe something like this for each one of these notes. Let's say I'm happy with this automation. I want to copy it to other parts of the song. In this situation, this is a chorus, but I have 3 choruses that are exactly the same, with the same vocal in each. So I want to copy the automation from chorus 1 to 2 and 3. And the best way to do that is to first create an automation item. Hold down Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, put our cursor in the lower left, right here, and draw in an automation item, right over here. So now we can move this very easily, just like any other items in Reaper. Now we could duplicate them by holding down Control on the PC, Command on the Mac, and put them on each one of our choruses. And notice they all have a different number, volume 1, 2, and 3, because they're all different. So in other words, if I re-automate or redraw in chorus 2, it's not going to affect chorus 1 or 3. Or if I do the same thing in 1 or 3, as they're all completely separate. So if I redraw some automation over here or down here, it only affected this one. But if I want the same automation in all 3 of the choruses, so if I change one, it changes all 3, so they're mirrored or known as pooled. We could do that by duplicating a different way. So let's undo that, and instead, on the PC, we'll hold on Alt, Control, and on the Mac, we'll hold on Option, Command. Then we drag it the same way to duplicate each one of these automation items. And now notice, they all have the same number, volume 1. So now, if I redraw automation on this one, or this one, they're all going to change together. Like this, change this note, maybe the ending, maybe drag it down like this, and each one changes together. So if we automate the second chorus, it affects the first and the third, or the third, or the first. So they're basically linked or mirrored, or what's known as pooled. So that's automation items pooled. Very useful when you want to mirror or link your automation from one section to another. So the next thing I want to show you is parameter modulation using an LFO. Now the idea of parameter modulation is that we can modulate or move in time any parameter on any plugin in Reaper. Let me give you an example. I have a guitar right here. Let's see what it sounds like now. Let's say we want to modulate some of the parameters of the guitar, like volume or pan. We can go to our track effects and add a volume plugin. Let's use the volume pan smoother and touch the volume knob as the last touched parameter. Go to the menu, notice last touched volume is chosen, and then choose parameter modulation. which opens up this dialog. We can turn on the LFO, and right away, that fader gets adjusted over time or modulated. Very similar to how a synth uses an LFO. We could adjust the baseline or the strength, which decides how far it moves, the speed, how fast it moves, make it a bit slower. Again, the baseline changes the area it moves in, up higher or down lower, put it up here on 0. Our phase, and again, the strength decides how far it moves, really far or just a little. So by adjusting our volume, we're going to create a tremolo effect like this. And we can put it in time with the song by choosing tempo sync. So we can make it exactly a quarter note. We can reverse the timing. We could also change the shape we're using. Right now, it's a sine wave, so it's very smooth, but we could change it to a square wave, which just makes it 2 positions. And we could also adjust any other parameter we want, even on the same plugin. So we could choose panning as the last touched parameter, choose parameter modulation for this one. Again, it opens up that dialog, turn on the LFO, and we can see panning is already modulating or moving. Let's use centered for this, so it centers between left and right. We can adjust our tempo. We can adjust the strength to decide how far it pans. We can change it to square, so it'll just pan left or right. And again, we could use any plugin we want. Let's try an EQ. We use re-EQ. Let's delete all the bands except for one and make it a low pass filter. Make the bandwidth more severe. Touch frequency as the last touched parameter, and turn on parameter modulation for this. Just the strength, so it doesn't move as far, just the baseline, so it decides where it's going to move. So we can create any type of effect we want just by modulating any parameter in any plugin in Reaper. So that's parameter modulation using an LFO. So the next thing I want to show you is how to reset everything. For example, let's say you're working on a song and you want to start from scratch. Maybe you have some effects, automation, volume levels already set up, but you want to start over completely from the beginning. Let's take a look how to do that. I have a project set up here with a bunch of tracks, and I'm just about to mix them. We can see there's effects on all the tracks. I have automation on all the tracks, which you can see over here. Go to my mixer. We can see the levels I have set up with some panning, and again, all the effects on the tracks. And in addition, some of the items have effects as well. I have some gates on my toms and a compressor on this bass item. So I want to reset all this back to 0. So I'll start off by selecting all the tracks. I'm going to type V for volume, just so you could see we're deleting this. Of course, you don't have to see this to delete it. Then I'm going to go to my actions by hitting the question mark and type into the filter, remove all envelopes. Now for this action, we do need the SWS extensions. So make sure you have those installed. I'll leave a link to them in the description below. And we're going to choose this action right here. Remove all envelopes from selected tracks. Again, we already selected all the tracks. So I'm going to double click this action. It confirms it. And it deleted all those envelopes, before and after. Now if we go to the mixer, we can still see the volume on these tracks, along with any panning. So let's reset those as well. Because we selected all the tracks, if I grab one, they all move together. So we can bring them all down to the bottom, maybe do this a few times, just to make sure they're all down here. And if you want to start off with all the faders at the bottom, we can leave them here. But if you want to start them at 0, just double click any of them, and they all go back to exactly 0. And we do the same thing with our panning. Just grab any of them, move it to the left, then to the right, maybe a few different times, then double click it, and they all go back to the center. So it's starting with everything panned in the middle. Now if you have any items with effects directly on them, like this, just select all the items, select all, go back to our actions, and choose Select All Effects. And again, with the SWS extensions installed, we could choose Clear Effects Chain for selected items and all takes. Double click this, and it deleted the effects from the items. Before, it had those effects, and after, it doesn't. So now we need to remove all the effects on the tracks. We can see them here, or in the mixer. And the quickest way to do that, without having to use Alt on the PC, Option on the Mac, for each one of these tracks, we could do it all if we go to the View menu and choose Project Media Effects Bay, which opens up this dialog where we could choose Source Media, Media Items, and if we choose the Effects tab, here we can see all the effects we're using in our project. If they're active, how many instances of each one, and all the different effects over here. Just select them all, hit delete, and they're all removed from those tracks, as we can see up here. So now we're starting over, or starting from scratch, creating a completely new mix. And again, if you want the faders to start at 0, just select them all and bring them down, or double click them to start them at 0. So that's resetting everything in Reaper. Very useful if you want to start a new, completely fresh mix. So the next thing I want to show you is splitting items under mouse and other under mouse actions. So as you probably know, to split our items, just put our cursor right where we want to create a split and click on it. That puts our edit cursor right on that spot. Type the S key, and that splits our item right there. And then it selects the right side of the split. Let's do it over here, or over here. But the one problem with this is you do have to click your items first, and therefore move your edit or play cursor. I find it a lot quicker to avoid that and just split our items underneath my mouse. And there are a bunch of hidden actions that allow us to do that. Let's open up the actions by hitting the question mark, type into the filter split, and if we scroll down, we could see this is the action that the S key uses by default to split items at edit or play cursor and then select the right side. But if we scroll up a bit, there's a bunch of similar ones up here that'll split under the mouse cursor. So we don't have to click and move the edit or play cursor first. So if we want the same behavior where it selects the right side, we could choose this option instead. Let's assign the S key to this one, replaces it, and now I could just put the mouse or cursor right over here, hit the S key, and it creates that split without having to click or move the edit cursor. The edit or play cursor is still in the same spot. Put it over here, make another split, go over here, or so on. So I find that a bit quicker for creating splits. And if you don't want to select the right side, we could choose the left side instead, or my personal preference to have no change of selection. Let's assign the S key to this instead. And now we can place our mouse or cursor right over here, type the S key, and it creates a split without making any selection or changing the current selection. Place it here, type S, or here, to very quickly create splits. And there's a bunch of other under mouse actions we could also use that are not currently assigned. Just type under mouse in the filter, and we can see all the actions we could use that are based on what's going on under our mouse. Like my personal favorites is to trim the left edge under the mouse or the right edge under the mouse. So if we choose these and assign a keyboard shortcut, I'm going to make this one A. I'm going to make this one B. Now we could trim based on the item under our mouse. So we could trim to the left by clicking over here, typing that key, and it trims the left side of the item, or the right side by hitting the other keyboard shortcut, and we trimmed the left and right side that easily. But if we make this a custom action, we could do it again without having to click or move the edit or play cursor first. So let me show you the custom action I created. I created two of them, one for trimming left and one for trimming right. And if we look at how they work, it's going to first move the edit cursor to the mouse cursor and then trim the left edge or right edge based on the item under the mouse. So if I assign those keyboard shortcuts to these instead, now we can do the same things without having to move our edit or play cursor first. So if I want to trim the left side of this, hit that keyboard shortcut, it trims the left side. Hit the other keyboard shortcut to quickly trim the right side. And again, doesn't create any selections, and it trims without having to move the edit cursor first. Although it does move it afterwards, we could trim the left side or the right side, and it trims the right side of the item. Over here, or right side, to very quickly trim our items to get rid of noise, or for any reason we want. It's a very quick way to trim the left and right side of our items, using custom actions, using actions under our mouse. So the next thing I want to show you is freezing tracks up to a point. So I have a project set up here with 3 tracks with virtual instrument plugins on each and MIDI on each. Let's see what it sounds like now. And if we go to the effects on these tracks, we can see I have a piano, virtual instrument, a reverb, a compressor, and an EQ. In this track, I have the same things along with a panning effect and a delay. Now, if these effects are taking up too much DSP processing or CPU processing, we can select the tracks and right-click, go to Render, Freeze Tracks, and choose to freeze tracks to mono, stereo, or multi-channel. Let's choose stereo. And that creates an audio file for each one of these tracks, which you can see right here. Now the effects are no longer on the tracks. As you can see, they're empty, but it's going to sound exactly the same, as those effects were printed to the tracks. But if we want to retweak any of those effects later, we can select the tracks again and right-click, go to that same menu, and choose Unfreeze Tracks. And that puts it all back exactly the way it was before. We can see we still have our effects on these tracks. But let's say we're pretty happy with the piano and reverb, but we might want to tweak our compressor and EQ. We could do that by just freezing the first two plugins, or the first one, or the first three, just by choosing the last effect we want to freeze up to, and right-clicking, go down here to Freeze Track, and choose Freeze Track to Mono, Stereo, or Multi-Channel up to the last selected effect. Let's choose Stereo again, and that creates another audio file. Again, it made an audio file for that track, but we still have some effects on this track, a compressor and EQ. The piano and reverb are frozen, so we can't tweak those at this point, but we still have the ability, while saving the DSP from those plugins, to tweak our compressor and EQ. Let's do the same thing with this other one. Again, we're happy with the piano and reverb, but we still want to tweak our compressor, EQ, pan, and delay. We can just choose the last effect we want to freeze up to, right-click it, go to Freeze Track, and choose Freeze Track up to last selected effect. And again, it creates an audio file right over here with those effects printed on the track. And again, it's going to sound exactly the same. But now we could still tweak the other effects if we want to. Our compressor, EQ, pan, and delay could all be tweaked even though we printed or froze those effects. But at any point we want to get back to the other ones, to our piano and reverb, we can still do that. Just select these tracks, right-click, go to Render Freeze Tracks, and unfreeze tracks, restoring the previous effects. And that puts it all back to our MIDI, where we can tweak any effect we had on the track. Our piano, reverb, and of course the compressor EQ. So it just gives us more options to only freeze part of our track, choosing just specific effects. So that's pretty much it. That's the best things you didn't know Reaper could do. I hope you learned something, hope you can use it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bingo, boys, let's go.
Bye.